Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? God, no. Should be previewing a Saints playoff game right now against the Rams. Instead, we're talking about what will become of the Saints in this offseason. Mike Triplett's been with us all throughout the year, and glad to have him hanging out with us here today again as we kind of look ahead to the offseason. Mike, thanks as always for the time, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Matt?
Well, if we were talking about a Saints playoff game, I'd be doing much better. But we're not. And that just kind of crept back into my mind there as I was preparing, and I got all upset again.
You really led me in with a whimper there.
Sorry about that. I get emotional sometimes, Mike. I don't know that how much you dial in when you're not on with us, but I have known to be emotional on air at times, so just had a little outburst. My apologies for that.
I got a question for you. You're the interviewer, but I got one for you.
Okay.
Because of your emotion, because you can kind of help me put perspective on this. A couple years ago, the Saints were 13-3, I think. Were they 13-3?
Yes.
When they were the number 2 seed.
Yes.
And they lost in the first round to the Vikings. This year, they're 9-8, won 4 of their last 5 games, put up a good fight, kind of exceeded expectations, but missed the playoffs entirely. What's the better outcome for like moving on and having optimism heading forward?
Oh, both outcomes suck. There's no better outcome. I thought you were going to say like which hurts more.
That was actually Malcolm Jenkins's quote was, everybody's in here trying to decide how bad this sucks that we had to sit there in the locker room and watch our chances slip away. Well, yeah. It always sucks. It sucks when you lose in the NFC Championship game. It sucks when you lose in the first round of the playoffs. It sucks when you get eliminated in Week 18. It always sucks. But it is interesting because I thought in general the fan base and the emotions of the people, based on my scientific knowledge of Twitter and what the crowds were like at games, and but I feel like the fan base really soured on this team this year. But I actually feel like fan appreciation of this team ended at its highest point since like week 1.
Wait, say that again. Fan appreciation ended.
Fan appreciation.
I see. I see what you said. Yes. Okay.
Ended by the end of week 18. I think the fans had come around to like sort of liking and appreciating this team after they were down on them for about 14 straight weeks in the middle of the year.
Look, Halloween really was the fulcrum. Whenever they beat the Bucs. And Jameis got hurt. When they beat the Bucs, even in spite of Jameis's injury, I think expectations were still there. And then we saw what happened the next 5 weeks. And really, for me, Thanksgiving against Buffalo was where I was at rock bottom and sort of gave up.
No, that's totally fair.
So for them,
I actually think the Giants game was the one where people openly hated the team, like openly hated the team for losing that game. Like, how dare you lose that game? And when they finished 9-8, I think most of my comments were, well, they hadn't lost that Giants game.
Look, those were my comments after the Giants game. I played them back here on the show. But Mike, it was, listen, that's the one, and you could tell then, because even then they were 3-2 after that loss, or 2-2. They were 2-2. It was week 4. They were 2-2. I said, look, this team. They can't afford
those. Yeah,
I even said
they're when you're walking a tightrope, you can't afford those.
I said they're going to finish 9-8, and if you're 9-8 and you're out and you miss playoffs by game, you're going to look back at this one and say this is the one that got away. And it is. You were leading by 11 with 8 minutes to go, and Daniel Jones beat you. Yep. That's unforgivable. But it's anyway. now they move forward.
In retrospect, the Giants had a hell of a season after that.
Oh my God, they were literally running quarterback sneaks, oh my God. Anyway, all right. So let's look ahead now, because you have a nice piece up at ESPN.com right now, which starts to address a lot of the questions the Saints are going to have. First and foremost, where we have to start every Saints conversation going into an offseason is, how the hell do they get in cap compliance by the start of the new league year?
Yeah.
They're about $70 million over. We know that this is Kai Harley's wheelhouse. They're going to do it. But what are some of the names of guys that we should be keeping an eye on that, okay, this is how they're going to do it?
Yeah, no, none, honestly. And not to be facetious, but last year was a real comeuppance because the cap dropped so drastically. Like, last year was what everyone kept saying would eventually happen. But the only reason it did happen was because the cap dropped by something like 18 or 16.5 million when it was supposed to go up by like 12, and so their cap was about 30 million less than expected last year. So they really had to cut guys. They had to, cut Emmanuel Sanders and Janoris Jenkins, who I think would have stayed on the team. I don't think they would have kept Trey Hendrickson. I don't think they would have kept Jared Cook. But maybe they would have signed a couple free agents that could have replaced those guys a little better. So last year was a problem. I am never going to come out here and say the Saints didn't get bit by the cap, because they did last year, but only because it was way lower than expected. This year, they're going to be about $70 million over the cap in a couple of weeks once they fill out their roster with all these reserve futures contracts. But they have all these mechanisms in place. The example I gave in the article is Ryan Ramczyk. His current cap number is gigantic, but they can turn like $19 million in salary and bonuses into a $4.5 million cap number just with like these simple conversions that they do. Now they have to pay it eventually. You're agreeing to the credit card deal where we will pay this over the next 5 years with no interest. But the cap keeps going up every year, and they're fine with that. So they don't have to cut anybody. Nobody has to be a cap victim. Now, somebody might be like a Bradley Roby if they don't want to pay him $10 million, or if they don't want to pay an Andrus Peat $9 million. Or a month ago, I might have said if they don't want to pay Cam Jordan $15 million, but he had such a great resurgence. They do not have to cut anybody, and they could do, they could be $30 million on the positive side just by converting bonuses. So they'll get it done, and they will even pursue Russell Wilson, and whatever they want to do at quarterback is possible. So $70 million over the cap, and believe it or not, that's almost a non-issue for them.
Wow. Well, that's actually great to hear, because I think we'd all kind of prepared ourselves for a redo of what happened last year. Everyone's going to talk about quarterback, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start with Michael Thomas. What happens with him?
Yeah, well, look, those are the big three. Those are the big three: is salary cap, quarterback, Michael Thomas. And man, I'll tell you what. I wish that I could tell you that I've covered this team for a long time, and I know how they work, and I know how everything works, and I know what they're going to do. But I am split right down the middle on Thomas. They absolutely could have reached a breaking point with him and decided, you know what? There's better ways to spend. He's due about $15 million this year. The dead money is the dead money. You can't make that go away. But his salary is 15 point something. Let's even call it 16 million if we round up. And that's a tough call. Like, they would have to really, really be really sour on what he's like in the locker room to want to just get rid of him and dump him for nothing, because there's no team in the league that needs a receiver more than the Saints. So if they think they can make it work, then they keep him, because you're not getting the Brandon Cooks or Jimmy Graham deal for him. You're not getting a first-round pick for Michael Thomas, I don't think, because other teams are going to have questions about how he missed the last year and a half with an ankle injury and how there's been some locker room issues. I think maybe you get a second-rounder for him. Maybe it has to be a third or a fourth. Maybe they're going to have to want to get rid of him. And they're the last team in the league that should want to get rid of a reliable receiver like that. So I think choice one would be try to make it work. But if they're beyond that point, then he's an obvious trade candidate. It's the reason why you asked me the question.
Yeah. I'm asking the question because I believe my audience is soured on Michael Thomas, and many people say get rid of him. I think that's asinine. I mean, he tried to play a year ago the entire season on a bum ankle. It didn't work out. We get it.
Look, that's why he was upset with the Saints in the first place. Yeah, he did fight through that over and over again, and messed up his ankle in the process. I mean, there are two sides to the story. Even though everyone obviously was beside themselves that he didn't have the surgery sooner, he also feels like I played on this thing when I probably shouldn't have, and I think that led to the spiraling.
No doubt. Look, the Saints sucked at receiver this year. Yes, I want one of the best receivers in the team in the league on my team. Yeah, this is easy for me, Mike. I want Michael Thomas back like yesterday.
Well, here's the funny thing. If you're going to say, all right, well, let's say that there's a team out there that is so desperate for receiver help that they're willing to gamble on Michael Thomas's health and his attitude, and they're willing to pay a lot for him. Well, that team would be the Saints.
That's the Saints, exactly. That's them. They're the perfect match. And Sean Payton knows how to use him, so yes. So then the question becomes, who's throwing him the football?
All right. In my mind, I think this team – now, this is something I do know from experience covering this team for a long time. They're going to be aggressive. They know that quarterback – they know they've got a great defense. And an aging defense, to be honest, if you include Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, and Malcolm Jenkins. I think they're going to be in win now mode, and I think they're going to be aggressive at quarterback. And so if there is a chance to get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, and I think Wilson's way more realistic than Rodgers, I think they're going to pursue that avenue. Now, I'm a little concerned that, how could the Saints possibly make the best offer? Seattle has already said, I think, that they want to keep Russell Wilson, and whether that's true or not, if the Giants want him, they can make a better offer than the Saints. The Saints pick 18th, and if they get Russell Wilson, they're going to pick 30th next year. So it seems hard to me that the Saints could make the best offer, but I think they will pursue that. However, if we get past Rodgers and Wilson, and we're talking Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield if he's available, all of a sudden I'm kind of like, you know what? I mean, do you want to give up a first or second round pick and $30 million for those guys when you could probably re-sign Jameis Winston for $10 million or less? You could probably bring back Teddy Bridgewater for $10 million or less. You could probably sign Marcus Mariota for $10 million or less. That seems way more realistic to me. Now, ideally, the draft would be you want to draft your own Mac Jones with the 18th pick, but that never happens. I mean, this year Mac Jones would probably go 1 overall. So anyone the Saints could get their hands on would be a project.
Okay. So you're not sold on Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral if either of them are there at 18?
Maybe, but here's the thing: it has to be a perfect storm. The Saints are probably going to like one guy in this year's draft class and one guy only. They're not going to be like, we'll take any one of these 4 because they all come with question marks. Their scouting department might like one guy, and the chances of the one guy they like being within reach at 18, the stars will have to align.
Mike Triplett is our guest. He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett. I should have booked you for longer, but I'm going to respect your time. Last thing.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you. Teron Armstead, Marcus Williams. Those, I guess, are the big name free agents. What happens with those guys?
I think I saw a Pro Football Focus list. It was the first one I Googled. Had Armstead like 2 and Marcus Williams 7. So we're talking about like top 10 free agents around the league, which and it's amazing that they're 4th on the list of priorities. But obviously 2 guys in 2 very different situations. If Teron Armstead was 25 years old and health wasn't an issue, he'd be the highest paid left tackle in football. And the Saints wouldn't let him go. They would franchise him. They'd pay him. They'd do whatever they have to do. Same thing they did with Michael Thomas, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara. He wouldn't leave the building. He's a big question mark because he's 30 and because of his injury history, but that also might make him more affordable. So I put him in that I'll put him at 50-50 category. But honestly, if I'm another team, he's a guy I gamble on. If I'm a team that's I don't know, the Eagles or something. I can't think of the exact team that needs a left tackle. But if I'm a team that's like an 11-win team and a left tackle will turn me into a 13-win team, I gamble on Teron Armstead. So he might get priced out of here, which would be a shame because I think he's been a great player. It's too bad he couldn't stay consistently healthy. But if he's affordable, I think the Saints keep him, maybe on a 1-year deal where he goes back into the market next year and hopes to stay healthy. Marcus Williams, I think they're going to pay. He's the perfect combination of, if you're trying to win now, you want Marcus Williams. If you're rebuilding, you want Marcus Williams because he's still only 25 years old. So I think he gets paid.
Mike Triplett, God, there's a million more that I could ask, but I have a feeling I'll probably just bother you more this offseason so we could talk about all this as we get closer to the start of the
Always happy to do it.
Well, we appreciate it all year, man, and it will be a fascinating offseason to say the very least. Thank you. We'll visit soon. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Be well. Good stuff there from Mike Triplett. The best news there is him saying, look, they don't have to cut anybody. There don't have to be any cap casualties this year because they could restructure. It's not $111 million. It's $60 million, and there's enough big contracts that they could restructure and get under the cap by $30 million to make play. So that's fantastic news because the Saints this year, their frontline players were great. The problem the Saints had was depth when they started having injuries. When Michael Thomas wasn't available, when Deontay Harris was suspended for 3 games, when Quan Alexander was injured. I mean, look at your offensive line. Your defensive line played exceptionally well, despite the fact that you didn't have Onyemata for 6 games, and that, well, I mean, you all know the story by now. We've been having that conversation for 5 months, but maybe a little more reason for optimism, considering. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.